The musical modes are not difficult to understand, but they are complicated to learn about. What I mean by that is the modes are everywhere in Eastern and Western music. However, they're used differently in all sorts of different musical practices. Jazz musicians have their own way of thinking and talking about and using modes. But Celtic musicians also have their own way of thinking about and talking about and using the modes. And film score composers have their own way of thinking about and talking about and using the modes. Which is why if you're jumping around on Google or on YouTube trying to teach yourself about the modes, you're going to find material that doesn't gel with the other material you saw, and it's going to feel very confusing. It's sort of like if you were a space alien and you came down to Earth and you're trying to learn about human food and you're like, what are eggs? What is the deal with eggs? If you ask that question to a baker in Paris, a mother of 5 in Vietnam, and a bodybuilder in Michigan, you're going to get 3 very different answers and probably walk away more confused about eggs than you were in the first place. I don't know if this is going to make you feel more confused or less, but I don't know. Let's try this. I came up with a little demonstration to show you what the different modes sound like and how they can be used in one specific context, which is the context of creating a chord progression. What I'm going to do is play the exact same chord progression on a loop, but every time around, I'm going to play it in a different mode. The progression that I'm going to play is the 1-5-4, which even if you've never heard that term before, you know it. These are all going to be in A, but they're going to be A Ionian, A Mixolydian, A Dorian, yada, 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 yada. So we're going to start off with A Ionian. 1, 5, 4, 1, 1, 5, 4, 1. Now Mixolydian. 1, 5, 4. Back to the 1. 5, 4. A Dorian. 1, 5, 4. Aeolian. 1, 5, 4. Like that. Okay, that was only 4 of the modes. That was the Ionian, Mixolydian, the Dorian, and the Aeolian. But there's 3 more modes, right? The Locrian, the Lydian, and the Phrygian. The Locrian, the Lydian, and the Phrygian are like kind of never used to do the 1-5-4 chord progression, and I'm going to show you why. The problem is for Phrygian, Lydian, and Locrian, you have a diminished chord in either the 1, 4, or 5 seat, and the diminished chords don't sound good. Here's the 1-5-4 in A Lydian. 1, 5. Pretty hard to compose with that. The 1-4-5 in A Phrygian would go 1, 5, 4, 1. The 1-5-4 in Locrian, 1, 5, 4. What even is this? Random notes. Weird. Does that mean it's impossible to write a chord progression with those modes? No. It just means it's impossible to write a 1-5-4 chord progression with those modes. And the reason why that is significant is the 1-5-4 chord progression and a couple of its variants are the most commonly heard chord progressions in Western popular music right now because they are the most stable. They are the most like tidy sounding. They have a very clear movement in a cycle of like, okay, this is the start. We're kind of stepping away, and then we're coming back home. The 1-5-4 and its variants have a very strong, very clear sense of motion and resolution. That's why the Lydian and the Phrygian are most commonly used for creating a special type of chord progression called a vamp. So whereas a progression like the 1-5-4 is meant to convey like a sense of motion, like a sense of beginning, middle, and end, vamps are chord progressions that are meant to feel like they're floating, like they don't go anywhere, like there's action but no motion. For example, the Lydian mode has a pretty famous progression that I'm just going to call the Lydian vamp. It sounds like this. I could just do this all day, right? This just Doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. You're just floating in space. Mott the Hopple in the game of life. Yeah. Andy Kaufman and the wrestling match. Yeah. The Phrygian also has a really great vamp that goes back and forth between the 1 and the 2. The Phrygian vamp you'll hear a lot in westerns or in flamenco music. And that's not to say that you can't create a vamp using a different mode. As long as you find 2 chords to wobble back and forth on that feel a little unsteady, like that's a vamp. There's a pretty great vamp in the Dorian mode if you just rock back and forth between the 1 and the 4 chord. Okay, so that leaves the Locrian mode. So what we do with the Locrian mode is absolutely nothing. The Locrian mode doesn't exist. It is a hypothetical mode. It is only there to make the math work out because Western musical theory is not a complete system. It's not a really great system. It's got holes in it that you could drive whole goddamn trucks through. To get the math to work out correctly, they created this completely hypothetical mode called the Locrian mode. There is no music in the Locrian mode. Even Aberdeen is upset about this. It is bullshit. The Locrian mode doesn't exist. It's garbage. I hate it. And there's no music in the Locrian mode. I will die on that hill. There are some tunes that people say are technically Locrian, but they have to do some really creative definitions of like where the resolution note is to make it make sense. Again, that's not meant to be a be-all, end-all explanation of the modes. It's just me describing what I'm calling my modal approach to chord progressions. But if you have any cool modes tricks, make videos about them and tag me in them. I want to see.